is about the First Amendment. It involves the Second Amendment, sure, and your right to keep and bear arms and make them if you choose. But really, this is about the First Amendment and about your right, not who decides what you can say, but your right to speak, as long as it's not harming someone else.
Yeah, that's right. And frankly, the actual terms of our First Amendment debate is whether the government can have a regime of regulation that first asks you to ask it permission before you can post something online. So look, Sandy Levinson, the professor you had in that clip before me, he was a professor at UT while I went to that law school. And I greatly respect his contribution to Second Amendment law, actually. He's very important in the history of Second Amendment law. But he's off base here. He doesn't understand the contours of the debate, and he's showing his lack of study of the questions of First Amendment law we've presented in these actions.
Speaking of off base, this judge that issued this injunction, I read parts of the ruling. It seems desperately conflicted, to say the least. To say the most, I think it's a judicial embarrassment. He essentially is saying, and you can put it in your own words, but essentially is saying, hey, your First Amendment, Cody Wilson's First Amendment rights are out the window as we allow this court proceeding to head down whatever line it's going to head down, and probably ultimately the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's right. People don't know this, but the primary defendants in this lawsuit with this judge's order are the Trump administration, the federal government. The federal government and the State Department is not going to give these states in this lawsuit some kind of power to second guess their decision making. So obviously, at the end of the day, the president has the chance of asking the Supreme Court to correct this, and they will. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Washington State, they don't get to second guess the decisions of the U.S. State Department.
8 states are suing. You mentioned a few of them there. It seems like to me a who's list of anti-gun. You have Massachusetts, New Jersey, Oregon, Maryland, New York, and of course, the District of Columbia. The fact of the matter is these plans, if you search around, they're all over the internet. And so, in effect, you're being persecuted. You're being targeted in this case when, in fact, these drawings and the ability to make a 3D gun if you choose are all over the internet.
I know. It's pretty wild. Really, there's a claim here for selective prosecution or persecution at the very least. They've elected to go after one company in America when, of course, many of the 3D printed design file sites and the blueprint sites across the internet that host this type of material, they've never been interrupted. They've had this stuff on their websites for years. This is so and such a manifest injustice that I actually think it will be easy to correct upon appeal or at the Supreme Court even.
Now, these folks are going to argue that these 3D printable guns are accessible by bad guys and terrorists, and to which I argue, well, yes, possibly. But then again, bad guys and terrorists have access to firearms. They have access to fertilizers. They have access to knives. They took down airplanes with just knives, didn't take a 3D gun. Is that pretty much the argument you use?
That's funny. Like, that's literally what I would have asked you or told you if you had asked me the question instead of made that statement. I'd say, look, terrorists and bad guys have access to guns now, right? Like, I didn't invent the gun. Of course, if I did, that would be challenged in federal court, wouldn't it? These people know that to some degree that they don't have the power. There's no law. There's no set of laws that they can hang this kind of their hat on here. They're just flailing around and hoping that liberal judges will give them time. They want time so badly to figure out a way to stop this.
One more thing that the liberals talk about is undetectable, untraceable. Okay, fine, but undetectable. If you have a loaded gun that you're trying to sneak through an airport and onto an airplane, and it's loaded with ammunition, it's going to necessarily set off the bells and whistles, is it not?
Well, sure. There's enough metal in there to at least register on a magnetometer. But look, we've all been through airports since 9/11. We aren't just limited to metal detectors. There's all kinds of imaging devices, X-rays, backscatter, all this stuff. And the Liberator shows up. This type of printed gun, these materials, it's not invisible on X-ray. It's been caught, in fact. Parts have been caught coming through belts in airports. They can detect the gun. So the claim that it's undetectable, quote unquote, is really like it includes a certain omission. Maybe undetectable by certain techniques some of the time, but there's such a range of security techniques and imaging that we have in modern security theater that it's not an undetectable gun.
Well, clearly, what you're doing here is using the Second Amendment to protect the First Amendment and also the First Amendment to protect the Second Amendment. And I think there's millions and millions of Americans who would say thank you, and I'm one of them, for doing exactly that and standing your ground. Cody, thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.